All right, my friends, welcome into episode 187 of the Leaning into Leadership podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a fascinating conversation with Anders Indset, a man who is appropriately known as the Business Philosopher. Now, Anders is a Norwegian-born author, speaker, and a deep tech investor whose work really explores the intersection between humanity, leadership, and exponential technology. He has a career that expands over 2 decades, advising international CEOs, political leaders, and the top business schools. And he brings a really unique philosophical lens to leadership in the modern world. Now, Anders has a new book out titled The Viking Code, The Art and Science of Norwegian Success. And it takes inspiration from the rich heritage of Norwegian values, and it connects them to today's pressing challenges in leadership and technology. You see, Anders is somebody who believes that in an age of overwhelming access to knowledge, our leaders need to deeply understand the human connection and the foresight that is required to navigate through an unpredictable future. This episode is fantastic, folks. Anders and I are going to dive into some leadership insights. We'll get his take on bridging the gap between humanity and technology, and he'll also give us a little sneak peek into his next book coming up, which is The Singularity Paradox, Bridging the Gap Between Humanity and AI. This is a fabulous conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it, so let's get right to it with Anders Indset. Why is it as leaders we struggle with being vulnerable with the people we are charged with leading? Why is it that as leaders, sometimes we struggle to admit when we are wrong, or even struggle with understanding that being wrong is simply part of a growth process? That's some of what we're going to get into today on this episode of Leaning into Leadership. My guest is Anders Indset, and holy cow, there's so much to tell you about Anders, but I'm just going to let him kind of share a little bit about who he is. We'll get to that in just a second. Before I do, Anders, welcome into Leaning into Leadership.
Darren, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation. This is one that, heck, you and I've been connected now for a few months, and the timing just has not worked out, and it's mostly on me, not on you. But here we are. We finally get a chance to sit down, hit the record button, and have a conversation about leadership, about vulnerability, about the art and the philosophy around leadership, and a little bit too about your new book, The Viking Code. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, Anders, let's, jump in the rewind machine here and take us back a little ways, orient us on your journey so my listeners have an opportunity to understand a little more about who you are.
Yeah, sure. I'm born Norwegian, true Viking, 98.5% Scandinavian, tested as per myheritage.com. So shout out, I am a true Viking. But I don't go back to that barbarian Viking style. I was curious in my childhood, the youth. I was a very, very passionate learner. I think that the exploration that my forefathers and the heritage of the Scandinavians bring to the table. I started to do a lot of sports, grew up in a smaller town, did all kinds of sport, a variety of things that I tapped into. I was just passionate about learning and getting, everything sucked in. I told my dad at a very early age, I'm never going to work for someone. So from a business standpoint, the entrepreneurship, the path of building something was always important to me. It led me to a path where I was also a professional athlete. I moved to Germany 25 years ago. I played professional sports, and after a couple of months, even though I didn't speak very well German at that point, I set up a marketing agency, a communication agency. And next to playing the sports, I was a hardcore capitalist. I wanted to build companies. I founded an online print house, and we set up some various branches. It was the beginning of search engine optimization and e-commerce. Having had a background as a nerd in programming websites, I tapped into the beauty and the aesthetics of building brands and doing marketing. Led to strategic consulting and leadership development within organizations, was always the one, traveling to the away games, sitting at the back of the bus, reading books. And on the way back, I was the one, driving the party, celebrating, and being all in for the fun. So the whole essence of being very active and doing a lot of things was always very important to me. But I didn't really feel success. From an outside perspective, you would say that having had some, success with professional sports, or even having built some decent companies, one might consider that as a good path. But I was just driven by that next level and moving on and finite goals and everything that was an extrinsic validation of what it means to be successful was who I am. So I had a detachment from me, from the inner, intrinsic motivation, and an understanding from things that I've learned to cherish today, to say, what do I not want to do? So it ended up selling off my company, retiring from sport, and sitting down and just reflecting. And I was sitting there with my then fiance, my wife, and talked about, what do I do now, right? And I thought I had a good understanding of the business world. So she said, yeah, you know everything about business, leadership, management, and you're passionate about philosophy, the philosophical contemplation. Why don't you combine the two of them? You're a business philosopher. And I said, okay, let's figure out what that is. So they started that path of uniting what I had seen coming, that a lot of the leaders was moving away from the finitude of knowledge and results, and had a lot of philosophical questions on their plate. You saw the rise of technologies. It was obviously way early for the AI, but you could see like the context of this technological tsunami arising. And therefore, to me, having that philosophical foundation alongside the understanding of business led me to that path of writing and speaking, and now eventually having gone that cycle over the past 10 years, I'm coming back to investing in companies. Today, I'm investing in tech companies because, to me, philosophy is a thinking practice. So I'm trying to take my thoughts and bring them into real, tangible business model and practical things within the economy. So that has been kind of sort of my quick run through of the journey that has led me up to now publishing my sixth book, and also setting up my venture capitalism company, where I invest in startups and tech companies and support companies in scaling. So that's basically the short journey of Anders over the past 30 years.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I love that. And I just a couple of things that really jump out. I mean, first and foremost, telling your dad at a young age, I'm never working for anybody. This is going to be me doing things my way. I really admire that a lot
I
as
was
somebody
12.
who's
I
only
was
been.
12, by the
You were
way. I was
12 years
12.
old. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
I was
amazing.
like, yeah, I was there starting in that small village of Rørus, the World Heritage listed small copper mining town, selling those shiny rocks and doing that entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
venturing. I was just all about that, creating something new. So I said, my dad, I want to go my own way and I want to do that. And so that was very early, but yeah, it's been a good ride.
Yeah. No, I think that's wonderful. I mean, as somebody who's only been an entrepreneur for a handful of years, it's very cool to know that you had that thought very early on that, look, this is how it's going to be. The other thing that I want to chase, and I think this leads us right into where we want to go with this conversation, is that connection that you made with the philosophy around leadership, and how more and more leaders maybe are starting to view leadership as not just about results, not just about the outcome, but about the process and about the learning and about that philosophy and those questions that as leaders we often have. I want to maybe have you talk just a little bit more about kind of marrying those two things together. And then I really want to dive in to what I kind of led with, the art of being wrong, which I know this is going to be a fun conversation. But let's start with that marrying of those two thoughts.
Sure. No, but first, yeah, I think I've had to play with that. That says basically what you said. I totally resonate with that. You said it's not, all about the output, but I would flip it and I would say that, the outcome of a process is the result of the quality of the input and the energy and the philosophy combined and how you put that. So take a marathon. The quality of your next step determines the outcome of the marathon. And that is basically saying that the experience of your own experience, having achieved a micro ambitious step, accumulates into results. So, what I wrote about in the book, in the Viking Code, was basically saying that my Norwegian countrymen, a lot of young boys, men, um, suddenly rose to the pinnacle of this, gigantic global sports that has nothing to do with snow, be it soccer, running, you have golf, tennis. We have the two best beach volleyball players coming out of Norway. The two best triathletes of the world are Norwegian. So there was that all of a sudden they rose to the top in sports from a country that does not, value or cherish high performance like the US. And I was very curious about how that came to be. So I started to look into the training methodologies and, what is the secret sauce and the code behind this. And what I realized was that they had built a structure where they were not only the best, but they were also the most liked and loved and cherished, even by the competitors and referees, because they tapped into that collectivism, understanding that if everyone around me performs at a higher level and I have an aspiration to grow, I can grow even more. So that was one finding. I said that they united basically high performance and values. So that was, the what got me going and said these are contradictions, aren't they? Individualism and collectivism. And I realized that when I started to look into that if you look at an organization today, it's very hierarchical and you fight your way onto the top, but you're actually playing on the same team. So you would be better off if everyone around you would be playing better. So if you buy into the common good, it's kind of like a reinforcement learning model. Everyone are uplifted and you can rise even more. So that was the structure of, how to tap into that potentiality of human beings, of growth as the foundation of the outcome, the result. So I started to look at that in terms of how to build an organization and say that, okay, so if I'm micro ambitious, I should have goals and visions, nothing wrong about that. But everything, if we tie that to the level of feeling success, we are always miserable. There is only one Elon Musk or whatever. There is one lucky monkey at the top. And if we always compare, we're not good off. So there has to be something else. And that's why I flipped that model and looked at, the quality of the input and what I would call today the Lebendigkeit, the vitality of life, to live an active life. That is what fuels the energy and the positivism, because you've experienced that you have learned something. Kind of like a toddler comes to the world with a empty storage and want to get up, want to move on. It's clapped on by the parents, and you have that small micro steps of progress. And the child experiences progress and therefore strives towards the next level. There are failures, you fall down, but the aspiration to go beyond and to learn something new is higher than the risk and the anxiety of failure. Therefore, we move on and strive towards the next level. And that is like kind of sort of the model and the thinking and the philosophy, that progress lies at the heart, the foundation of what it means to be a human being. Experienced progress is what makes for a fulfilled life. You fill your life with intrinsically motivated, active tasks, and therefore you have a fulfilled life. As in comparison to reacting to impulses, reacting to tasks, and just being a part of that optimization game, namely the art of being right, where everything's become binary and everything is tied to technology and the optimization, which probably is a good lean in terms of leadership to what you
Yeah.
wanted to talk about in terms of the art of being wrong.
Yeah, no, that I think that absolutely sets it up perfectly. I find that fascinating, and I'm reflecting on what you just talked about, and what what I had the opportunity to review with the book, and as somebody who I was not a professional athlete, but I was an athlete. I was a tennis player. I'm an avid golfer. I'm a terrible golfer, but I'm an avid golfer. And I look at some of the individuals, and the one that jumps right to the very, very front of my mind is Victor Hovland. And,
Mm,
certainly watching his success and how he has continued to rise, to rise, to rise in the PGA Tour rankings and that kind of thing. Most of the people that you talked about are in individual sports. Triathlon is you against everybody else, or you against you if you choose to view it that way. And beach volleyball, yeah, there's two of you, but still, I mean, that's not like a team of 53 professional football players in the U.S. or 22 guys on a baseball roster. So I find it so interesting that the examples here of we rise together are of individuals. Can you just talk just a little bit more about that? Because I find it absolutely fascinating. And also, I find it this interesting parallel that will take us to the art of being wrong that almost flies in the face of how most leaders, I think in that, it isn't always about, it's more about me. So maybe just talk a little bit more about that.
no, 100%. And in the individual sports, you cannot hide, right? If you're in a team and your team performs at a high level, there is always a glitch, a small microsecond or a phase where you can get away with something. Today, of course, everything is driven by data. So how far you run, how fast you run, what you do, how many mixed days, it's all like data driven. So it's all, a perfection of the optimization of the methodology that you put into play. The same applies for business, right? Today, a world-class product is not a USP. It's just a necessity to survive. So it's like a competitive market where everything that is data-driven, we all have the same access. Eventually, it will be efficiency all the way. So in a team sport, you have at least a little bit of chance, but in an individual, there is no other, right? So it's fully intuitive to say it's a fight me against everyone else. But then you start to look at it and you see that, okay, around this individual, there's a team. What you found with the individual athlete that you just mentioned, Victor Hovland, Casper Ruud, Erling Haaland, the soccer player that is now you line up next to LeBron James as the front figure of US global marketing. What you see is that there's a father, a mentor that is very closely tied to this person, which if you look at especially young men today, they don't have a lot of friends, deep talks, conversation, challenge, the difficulties of life, speak openly, deeply about things. One aspect. The other aspect is with all the data driven and the optimization game, there's a team, right? And then there are, your competitors, the referees in tennis. You said, oh, referee, the ball was out. You lose 1 million, but you're the fair play. You're cherished by everyone else. You're liked. And therefore, there's this like kind of sort of you sympathize with these athletes. And that again makes them popular, which drives the game, and it increases, the whole ecosystem of positivism that fuels the progress of the sport itself. So within that mechanism, you're an individual, but you realize that I am because you are. This conversation alone, it wouldn't make a lot of sense if I was speaking into a computer without having you. So I'm only Anders in relationship to you. So this is kind of sort of a model of a declaration of interdependence, where I invest into the collective. And if you understand the power of that, then it becomes something magical. And this was ancient Viking understanding. Small villages, we could only survive together. We had to build a boat, row the boats. Everyone had a role. Of course, there was this bold leader that set out into the open sea, and you had that visionary people. They rise above But the whole understanding of the collective is deeply ingrained into the ethos of the Norwegian culture. We even have a word for this called dugnad. It's a chapter in the book that I write about. It's like voluntarily work without the work. You just show up for others, communal service, but you just show up for the collective because you understand if everyone around me is doing better, and if I then have an aspiration for individualism, I'm better off practicing on that high level. And taking that into the organization, I think is magical. If you can have that practice pitch that people can open up, trust in the unknown, and get the potentiality of the individual unlocked, there is a great potential beyond the optimization game of technology. So now, especially at the rise of AI, things like a culture, motivated people, collaboration, co-creation. We live in an era of generalists. So we have to get together and figure out how to understand the complexities, how things are intertwined, that we can generate friction and trust to tap into the unknown. And for that, we need this sense of collectivism, I believe. So I think there are very many lessons learned from the Viking Code in terms of leadership in business.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I really appreciate you going a little bit deeper with that, because I think that really encapsulates or no, let me choose a better word there. That really sets us up well for this next piece, which is, with all of the foundation you just laid, really successful organizations, really successful leaders will embrace the art of being wrong and not feel that they always need to be right. Let's take that and kind of run with that a little bit. Just from the foundation that you just built, let's talk a little bit more about why first of all you call it the art of being wrong. And then second, how does that best position leaders to ensure success for their entire organization?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and I'm happy you went there because it's kind of sort of to many difficult to grasp that we don't solve problems, right? We just make problems better. So we have built a world of optimization, the art of being right. And this was a very good journey for the past 50 years. It led to a lot of progress. Never have we lived longer. Never have we uplifted more people from poverty. Never have we had more wealth, at least in a Western civilization. So it has been 50 years of progress. People can complain, and having the poorest amongst us complain on a high-speed internet online just leaves an essence of materialism and the progress that we have experienced over the past 50 years, right? The access to data and knowledge and all that. So this is like true for the optimization game. But what happened with that binary way of you're right and I'm wrong and I'm wrong and you're right, and the thumbs up, thumbs down society that we have learned also to communicate through social media, where there is an instant reaction that fuels the economy and no reflection. This is how we have started to communicate, obviously leads to a division. And this division is technology driven because this is what technology is good at. An AI, a robot, never makes the same mistake twice, because if there's an observer of the mistake, it gets corrected. So it's an optimization machinery of packed knowledge, do less, more with less. And in this game, the human always loses because technology is much more powerful. So therefore, we become exhausted and worn out because the speed of reaction increases, right? So this is the foundation of that technology game. So what do? We come up with these fantastic ideas that we need to build some kind of failure culture where everyone runs around and tries out failure and think that that is the essence of a happy organization. And I say, no, 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 no. We don't want failure. We want high performance. We want things to function. I do not want a pilot who has trained on a failure culture flying into Frankfurt, right? I want to have that to work. So we want to have efficiency. We want to have perfection. But the much deeper part of what it means to be a human being lies not in the given, they're reactive to that we do not know, because what we do know is an answer to a question that someone has already asked. And that on a high speed is just very exhausting, because our performance is reacting to impulses, as in comparison to creative or being active as a human being, a lively entity. And therefore, the art of being wrong is the foundation of progress. You experience that you have learned something, and then you can correct and grow, or you experience that there is something beyond what you knew, where you can tap into the unknown. And this is the foundation of any successful human being or entity. And that lies in that if there is two things that are given, and we have a trusted environment, and you are of opinion A and I am of opinion B, there will be progress if we are in a trusted environment, because we have friction. So either it leads to I learn something, or you learn something, or we dance and we tap into a new scenario in the unknown, and we have progress. And this is the art of being wrong. The art of being wrong is the experience of learning. And learning and experience in that you have progress is one of the most, I think, fulfilling things that we as individuals, as human beings, can do. I grow, I learn. Coming back to where we started, I never felt success until I let go of those extrinsic motivated goals and discover that today I'm highly successful to me, because I get up every morning and correct my understanding of the past through learning. And therefore, the art of being wrong is basically philosophy. We can have egos, we can discuss, I can win a debate. But if I go to a discussion and I understand that I was wrong, there is an ego on the other side who feels like a winner, but the true winner, that's me, because I have learned something new. So I have experienced progress. And I think that progress, positive progress, lies at the heart of what it means to be a human being. And therefore, I define philosophy, the strive for wisdom, the search, the definition of progress. To me, that's the art of being wrong. And it's a beautiful art form.
Yeah, man, I love that so much, and it's very much, we've talked off and on about your entrepreneurial journey as well, and so much of that parallels what the entrepreneur journey is as well. It's every day is an experiment, every day is an opportunity to grow, to learn, to be wrong, and to correct and continue to get better. I really, really appreciate that. Man, that is so, so very good. And just like that, our time has absolutely flown by, which I kind of had a feeling it would, man. This is such an awesome conversation. But we're at that point in the show that I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody who we have here on the show. So this is the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So Anders, tell me how you are leaning into leadership right now.
Yeah, I think just following up on that, we just went down that road towards the art of being wrong. The vulnerability that you, as a leader in front of people, if you let the ego, leave the ego at the door, so to speak, and you have that awkward feeling in your stomach that I have no idea what this person is talking about. This person is obviously of some knowledge that I don't have. And if that is one of your employees, we have been taught to be experts, to be strong. And I realize very often that this strength through power, to domination, through hierarchy, is overplayed insecurity. And we spoke a little bit about that insecurity and that, anxiety for tapping into the unknown or tapping into that vulnerability. And that vulnerability where you say like, wow, I have no idea what you're talking about in front of your employees as a boss, as a leader. And then following up with the like kind of sort of the essence of understanding that I'm not an expert, I'm a professional amateur, and I'm going to prove that to all my employees, and saying that, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, the quantum tech, whatever, but I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to hook up on GBT. I'm going to read about it. And we're going to get back tomorrow and have a healthy conversation on eye level where I can tap in, I can lean in as a leader to the conversation so that we can have that dance and experience progress. That is very much what I'm writing about at the moment in terms of leadership. And a second thing that might be interesting for your listeners as well, I think the modern organization symbolizes that dynamism. I call it the magical threefold of modern business or entrepreneurship. Number one, today companies incubate their own clients. So you lean in, you go to try to make your clients successful because they will do more business with you. That's a model that has been going on in beverages and bars and restaurants for ages because, all these beverages companies support the bars so that they come back and buy a lot of, brew from them. The second part is in today's dynamism, we also invest. We need to invest in order to build asset classes and try to invest in companies that might become our new business model because we need to have equity and have some money and assets outside of the core business. And that leads us to number three, which is my core product or service is never set in stone. It used to be a one-time solid product that you can market and sell around the world. Today, it's a continuous dance and adaptability of the product itself. So this magical threefold of how to run a modern organization has very much to do with progress and learning and understanding and being wrong and having that dynamism of progress. So those are the two things that I lean into a lot in terms of leadership. And obviously, we haven't talked about that, but trust. Self-trust I think is a very, very strong core to what it means to be a good leader. Trusting yourself in order to trust other people.
Yeah, absolutely. We could probably do a whole nother episode talking about trust and, and have an awesome conversation with it. Man, this is awesome. I know people are going to want to get in touch with you. They're going to want to follow you. Maybe certainly they're going to want to check out a copy of the Viking Code or some of your other books. What are the best ways for people to get connected to you?
Yeah, thank you, Darren, for that. Yeah, sure. AndersIndset.com is my website. A lot of articles, more content coming there. Also, what I'm working on, there's a page working on now that you can follow to see what I'm up to. We do some publications also around, what we call sci-fi, PHI, science philosophy, where we tap into the technological part. And Viking Code is found on Amazon or viking-code.com. And my forthcoming book is titled Singularity Paradox under singularityparadox.com, Bridging the Gap Between Humanity and AI, which is a very technical book. And it's about creating an artificial human intelligence as a path forward towards AGI and technical singularity. So those are sources. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to link up and always up for a good conversation.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. This was an absolute blast.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Darren.
All right, folks, that was a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate Anders joining me here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Everything you need to get connected with him, to pick up copies of his books and so forth, is available for you in the show notes. And now it's time for a pep talk. So earlier this week, I spent some time in a few of the schools that I support, and I was having a pretty deep conversation with one particular leader. Now, this particular leader has just gone through one of the challenges that I think a lot of us deal with as school and district level leaders. He had needed to make the decision to move on from somebody within the organization, and he knew going in that this decision might be unpopular with a certain percentage of people in the community or within the school or whatever the case may be. And while they've certainly navigated their way through this particular challenge, it was interesting to sit and have this conversation with this leader and to watch them reflect so deeply around not just the making of the decision, the execution of the decision, those types of things, but also the personal side that people outside of leadership don't get to see. They don't get to see how we as leaders struggle when we make those difficult decisions. Not that necessarily sometimes those decisions are hard to make. It's the impact that both it has on the person who you are moving on from and on their personal life and on their professional life, but also that there will be scrutiny, that there will be challenge, that there will be sleepless nights. It took me back to a time when I was a high school principal, very early in my high school principal career, when we had to let a head coach go. And the head coach had certainly made some decisions that I think put them in a position where deciding that we needed to move in a different direction was fairly easy. But all the weight that comes with that decision, you carry that around as a leader. And I know this doesn't sound very pep talk like, but what I want you to think about, and the reason that I'm talking about this today, is so often we carry that burden. I want you to remember other leaders carry that burden as well. Reach out to other leaders reach out into your network just to gain some support. You don't have to talk about the decision. You don't even have to talk about, any criticism or anything you've received. Just having a conversation with another leader, knowing that others have gone through it or are going through it or may be going through it soon, there's a very tight bond, I think, genuinely between all leaders who have had to go through a challenge like that. So if you're going through that type of a challenge, make sure you reach out to one of those leaders as well. Reach out to me. I am happy to have a conversation, to just simply be a sounding board, to be an ear, to be somebody who can empathize and sympathize with you on making some of those tough decisions. Well, that's what I got for you this week, folks. One ask that I have for you: if you have not given us a review on your podcast platform, please do so. The more of those reviews we see come in, the more we have people coming back and checking out the show. And it also drives that algorithm to help other people discover the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So please, if you have the opportunity, give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much, folks. Get out there. Have a road to awesome week.